Human beings, it would seem, have a fascination with death. While most of us would tend to agree that it is something best avoided, it also holds a sense of wonder for us. As the short story The Body by Stephen King, later made into the film Stand By Me, graphically illustrates, even as children, we are drawn by the allure of the dead. Just consider how many ways we have of saying that someone has died. Wikipedia counts at least 80, and there are doubtless dozens more. But nowhere is our fascination with death exemplified as much as how we treat our dead. In most Western countries, death is celebrated with a, often solemn, ceremony, and the deceased is interred in a necropolis, a city of the dead, more colloquially known as a graveyard or cemetery. The burial site is often given a marker or memorial so the deceased may be remembered by future visitors to the site. Of course, funeral rites vary from place to place, but in most cases, great care and ceremony are involved. Five. Space burial. In the late years of the 20th century, it became the vogue to be buried in space, that is, to have a small part of the cremated remains placed into a capsule, about the size of a tube of lipstick, and launched into space using a rocket. Since 2004, there have been about 150 space burials. This option is not commonly chosen, as it can be quite expensive and only one company currently specializes in providing this service. In most cases, the remains are fired into Earth orbit, though some have been launched into other trajectories, including to the Moon, Pluto, and deep space. Famous people who have been buried in space include James Doohan, Scotty of Star Trek fame, Gene Roddenberry, creator of the aforementioned Star Trek, Timothy Leary, American writer, psychologist, and drug campaigner, Clyde Tombaugh, American astronomer and discoverer of Pluto, Dr. Eugene Shoemaker, astronomer and co-discoverer of the comet Shoemaker-Levy 9, and Leroy Gordon Gordo Cooper, Jr., American astronaut and one of the original Mercury 7 pilots. Four. Exposure. Exposure is not typically practiced intentionally in the West today. More often, it results from an accident where someone dies in an isolated location and the body goes unnoticed for a period of time. However, there are people who dispose of bodies in this manner on a regular basis. Tibetan sky burial, known as a jitter, is the ritual dissection of the body, which is then laid out for the animals or the elements to dispose of. Tibet is a mountainous land where the soil is too rocky to dig graves and there is a scarcity of fuel for cremation, so sky burial arose as a logical alternative. Here's how it works. After being sent on their way with ceremony, the remains of the deceased are toted up to a designated location, where the body is laid out, typically naked. Then the Rogyapas, body breakers, go to work. Flesh is stripped from bones, limbs are hacked away and the whole is ground up and sometimes mixed with tsampa, a mixture of barley flour, tea, and yak butter or milk, and offered to the vultures, which have learned to keep watch on the traditional burial site. The Rogyapas do not go about their task with somber ritual, but rather they laugh, joke and chat as in any other manual labor. 3. Mass grave. When expedience is an issue, as is often the case with a plague or a disaster, a mass grave may be used. A mass grave is simply a singular location in which multiple human remains are interred. Mass graves are common as a result of wars, plagues, famine and disasters, when health concerns become an issue, and it would be unwise to wait for each body to be identified and given the proper rights. Mass burial is generally frowned upon because it detracts from the identity of the deceased. Mass burial was once far more common than today, but the practice is hardly lost to modern people. Locations known to harbor mass graves include the killing fields of Cambodia, the Soviet Union, Chechnya, Iraq, and even the United States. Hart Island is a potter's field, a place intended for the burial of unknown or indigent people, for the city of New York. It is the largest tax-funded cemetery in the world and currently houses over 850,000 residents, dating as far back as the Civil War, and is still used even today. Two. Dismemberment. Dismemberment involves cutting, tearing, pulling, wrenching, or otherwise removing the limbs of some creature. It is typically committed after death, for a specific purpose, but on occasion has been the cause of death. Until the late 19th century, hanging, drawing, and quartering was a common punishment for high treason. This involved the offender being dragged through the streets by a horse while tied to a hurdle, then being hanged by the neck until nearly dead, but certainly still alive, having the vital organs removed from the abdomen and burned in front of them. Males were typically castrated at this time, as well, and their genitals also burned, then being decapitated and the body cut into 4 pieces. The head and pieces were then typically boiled and displayed as a warning to others. In the Netherlands and Belgium, those convicted of regicide had their arms and legs tied to horses and the abdomen sliced open. In modern times, the most likely reasons for dismemberment are to hide the identity of the deceased, or to make the corpse more accessible for transport or fitting into tight spaces. Thus, it is typically performed post-mortem. Because fingerprints, hair samples, facial modeling, and toe prints can all be used to indicate identity, there are good reasons why many murderers take the extra time to do this. Dismemberment has also been practiced in the past on the bodies of Catholic saints, as their earthly remains are considered to be holy relics. One. Cannibalism. Also known as anthropophagy, cannibalism has been recorded throughout history and continues to be practiced even today. Specifically, it is the act of humans eating other humans. If humans are specifically killed to be eaten, it is called homicidal cannibalism. If the practice is restricted to those already dead, it is called necrocannibalism. There are 2 kinds of cannibalistic social behavior: endocannibalism, the act of consuming humans from the same community, and exocannibalism, eating humans from other communities. Cannibalism may be practiced for a number of reasons. Among primitive peoples, it was often believed that consuming an individual's flesh could grant their abilities to the cannibal. Cannibalism might also be performed simply because the cannibal enjoys the taste, as a form of insult to the dead, or to honor them. Cannibalism has long served as a recurrent theme in myth and legend, dating back to ancient Greece, with stories of Cronus, an elder god who was said to have devoured his children. Baba Yaga is a famous Russian cannibal, and the brothers Grimm related the story of Hansel and Gretel, in which 2 young children, left in the woods to die by their parents, find a cottage made of cake and gingerbread. The building turns out to be the residence of a cannibalistic hag who enjoys the tender flesh of young children and plans to cook and eat the pair, but is slain by the cleverness of the children.